Wildfire. What do you think of when wildfire is mentioned? For many, the term evokes images of destruction, loss, and fear. While wildfire can certainly be destructive, that is only part of the story. In many ecosystems, wildfire is a fundamental ecosystem process that has a natural and unique pattern. These patterns include frequency, seasonality, intensity, severity, fire type, extent, and spatial pattern. And they are called the fire regime. Understanding the fire regime and how it has departed from the natural or historic norm is essential for effective management of an ecosystem. This video is part of a series that delves into the complex world of fire regimes in the Southwestern United States. By examining fire regimes, we explore the dynamic relationship between fire and the landscape, providing a deeper insight into the ecological significance of wildfire across the Southwest. The Sonoran Desert hosts a remarkable diversity of life, from towering cacti and flowering shrubs to palo verde trees with their distinctive green bark. It is a rich tapestry of life that supports an equally varied range of wildlife, including desert tortoises, Gila monsters, and ringtail cats. The Sonoran Desert is one of the most biologically rich deserts in the world, defined by its seasonal rhythms, bursts of wildflower color, and strikingly adapted species. The dominant vegetation type in much of this region is called Sonoran desert scrub. This plant community is characterized by its patchwork of cacti, shrubs like jojoba and wolfberry, and the occasional mesquite or ironwood tree. Sonoran Desert typically occurs between 500 and 3,500 feet in elevation, though it can extend to about 4,600 feet in places. This video explores the role of fire in the Sonoran Desert scrub ecosystems of the Southwestern U.S. In many forested ecosystems, scientists can study fire history by analyzing fire scars preserved in tree rings. These scars act like a natural archive, recording each fire event across centuries. But due to the lack of trees in the Sonoran Desert scrub, this approach isn't possible. Most plants in this arid landscape are not fire-resistant in the same way as thick-barked trees. When fires occur, they often kill the vegetation entirely, leaving little or no woody material behind to preserve a fire record. And without fire-scarred trees, researchers have to get creative. To piece together the fire history of desert scrub, scientists turn to other tools. Historical accounts, both written and oral, can provide valuable clues. Clues can also be found by examining the traits of the vegetation itself. For example, in relatively undisturbed desert scrub, scientists can examine the arrangement or type of fuels. The fuels being the plant materials or fine grasses, or anything that can burn. And from this, scientists infer how often fires have occurred in the past. Another method is by looking at plant adaptations. Many perennial shrubs in mid-elevation desert scrub can resprout after being burned. This ability to regrow suggests a degree of adaptation to occasional disturbance such as drought and possibly fire, even if fire isn't frequent or ecologically central in this system. Scientists also examine neighboring ecosystems to better understand fire dynamics. At higher elevations, Sonoran desert scrub often transitions into grasslands, chaparral, or oak woodlands, ecosystems that historically experienced more frequent fires. Under the right conditions, fire from these areas may have occasionally spread downslope into desert scrub. To understand the role of fire in the Sonoran Desert, it's helpful to learn about its historic fire regime. A fire regime is characterized by temporal attributes including frequency and seasonality, the characteristics of magnitude, which describe intensity, severity, and fire type, and spatial characteristics, which involve the size and spatial pattern of the fire. These components shape everything from how plants recover after a fire to which species dominate the landscape, to how resilient an ecosystem is, to future disturbances. In desert scrub ecosystems where fire is relatively rare and conditions are often harsh, even small changes in the fire regime can have long-lasting ecological consequences. One important component of a fire regime is fire frequency, a measure of how often fire occurs in a given area over time. This is usually expressed as a fire return interval, or the average number of years between fires at a specific location. In Sonoran desert scrub, fire return intervals vary widely depending on elevation, vegetation type, and proximity to more fire-prone ecosystems. At the lower elevations, where towering saguaros dominate the landscape, fires were historically extremely rare, with return intervals likely exceeding 1,000 years. The sparse, discontinuous fuels in these areas make it difficult for fire to spread under most conditions. In contrast, higher elevation desert scrub communities experienced more frequent fires. In these transitional zones that bordered more fire-prone ecosystems, historical fire return intervals are estimated to range from about 100 to 350 years. One of the most important drivers of fire in desert ecosystems is precipitation. In wet years, the desert can explode with life, especially fast-growing annuals or super blooms that produce a flush of fine fuels. These fine fuels can dry quickly when temperatures rise, setting the stage for fire. As a result, fire frequency in Sonoran desert scrub is more closely tied to climate variability. Historically, fires in the Sonoran desert were ignited by dry lightning during the summer monsoon season, which typically spans from mid-May through early September in the southwest. These lightning strikes, unaccompanied by significant rainfall, could spark fires when there was enough fuel present. There is limited evidence that indigenous peoples used fire extensively within the Sonoran desert. However, it is possible that intentional burns ignited in adjacent grasslands or woodlands may have carried into desert scrub communities during extreme fire weather or in years when the cover of fine fuels was sufficient to carry fire. While direct indigenous fire use in desert scrub may have been rare, the broader landscape-level influence of indigenous burning practices cannot be entirely ruled out. When fires did occur in the past, they were carried by native annual forbs and grasses. These fine fuels supported low-intensity surface fires, which could occasionally flare into the canopy of shrubs or trees. Despite being generally low intensity, these fires were often high-severity stand-replacing fires, resulting in over 75% stand mortality. This is because much of the vegetation in Sonoran desert scrub is not adapted to survive fire or regenerate after being burned. While some desert scrub species are capable of resprouting after being top-killed by fire, this response is inconsistent, varying not only between species but sometimes within the same species. By examining recent fires such as the 2020 Bighorn Fire near Tucson, Arizona, scientists have gained new insights into how fire likely behaved historically in Sonoran desert scrub. Evidence suggests that in the past, historic scrub communities burned in a mosaic pattern of relatively small, patchy fires, most often occurring on north-facing slopes where moisture levels are higher and fine fuels accumulate. When these fires would spread, they were still typically small, under 125 acres. Larger fires of more than 950 acres were rare and likely occurred only following periods of above-average precipitation, which allowed native annuals to flourish and temporarily create continuous fuel beds across the desert floor. So what role does fire play in the Sonoran desert today? Well, the fire regime in the Sonoran desert is changing dramatically, primarily due to the introduction of non-native invasive species. Invasive grasses like bufflegrass and red brome, and invasive forbs like stinknet have infilled the naturally sparse and patchy vegetation. This creates a continuous layer of fuel, making it easier for fires to ignite and spread across the landscape. These fuels are also connecting desert lowlands to nearby ecosystems across the mountain ranges, increasing the potential for larger and more complex wildfire. Invasive plants don't just increase the likelihood of fire, they also burn hotter and faster. The result is higher intensity fire with increased fire severity and ecological impacts. These fires leave behind open seedbeds, where invasive species can quickly reestablish, outcompeting native desert plants. Over time, this leads to a shift from diverse desert scrub to grass-dominated landscapes with an entirely different fire regime, a process known as grassification. At the same time, increasing human activity and the expansion of the wildland-urban interface, where development meets natural vegetation, are compounding the problem. Vehicle ignitions, recreational sparks, and other human-caused fires are now more frequent. Combined with invasive fuels, they've turned what was once a rare occurrence into a near year-round fire season in some places. The Sonoran Desert is a starkly beautiful and biologically rich landscape that historically experienced very little wildfire. but over recent decades, its natural fire regime has become deeply altered. We are now at a turning point. The economic impact of grassification, especially in viewsheds and recreation areas, is many times greater than the cost of proactive management. And because most desert species recover slowly, often over decades to centuries, repeated fires can irreversibly alter these ecosystems. Today, increasing pressure from urban expansion, motorized recreation, and invasive species are reshaping the Sonoran desert landscape. These pressures raise serious concerns, not just about ecosystem health, but also about increased fire risk to nearby communities. In response, scientists and land managers are collaborating on new strategies to protect the Sonoran Desert. In areas where fire ignitions are high or where the invasive grass fire cycle is underway, managers can implement desert-adapted fuel breaks, which are fuel reduction methods that don't promote invasive species. Methods such as targeted herbicide treatments and even prescribed burning or spot burning, each carefully tested and monitored for effectiveness and ecological impact. While areas of the Sonoran Desert have already experienced the desert to grassland transition, collaboration between land managers and scientists offer a path forward to protect what remains. By applying the best available science, practicing adaptive management, and fostering communication among agencies and communities, people can slow further transformation. The goal is a fire-informed approach where desert scrub ecosystems continue to support the rich diversity of life they have for generations past and generations to come.